Hello and welcome to A Celtic World, the YouTube channel and podcast connecting Celtic fans all over the planet. From Macrahanish to Manly, Kirkintilloch to Caerphilly. You can be part of A Celtic World at these times, as we currently show them. That's all about to change as the clocks change. We're going to be going out, I think, at 11 a.m. Celtic Park time as from next week. But, you can stay on top of these times very easily simply by subscribing and ringing the bell so you get notified when we go live. That way you don't have to worry about it. So how are we all doing? We have Stephen in Australia and Ian in Wales. Let's go to Ian first and say hello to Ian. What's the crack?
Yeah, not too bad. Got a couple of days off. My parents are back down to look after my daughter for the Easter holidays. So yeah, I'm just child free, but I got a day off. So yeah, just don't know what to do with myself. Like what's all this?
That's a very international break answer.
Yeah, well, I've not been given any jobs from the other half, which is weird. I think I managed to get them all done at the weekend. So yeah, I don't know, might fire up the Xbox later, but yeah, no great plans. No great plans.
So the Caerphilly in the introduction was obviously a nod to your Welsh location, and
Caerphilly.
Is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's Caerphilly.
Oh dear.
But I think it's Henry Henry, isn't it? Terry Henry, isn't it? It's like depends where you're from.
Okay, just like that. And the Manly in the introduction was obviously to Stephen, who's planning to move quite soon, but that's a familiar looking room you're in. So the move hasn't happened yet.
No, not till I'm moving up to Manly on the 22nd of April. So I've got another 4 weeks of this location, and then we'll be relocating probably about 100 metres from the water. So very much
200 metres last week. So yes,
yeah, I'm getting close to me. It's a solid exaggeration anyway. So
I once went on a work trip to set up an office in Sydney, and they put me up on a hotel that, as you walked out, was right onto Manly Beach, and you could see the sun rising. Spectacular location, and I think for about 6 weeks I got the ferry into work, so you'd walk down to the ferry terminal across some life.
Yeah. Doesn't compare to Cardiff though, does it?
No, I mean no.
That's what I'll be doing. The place we've bought is really, really close to Manly Wharf, so it's like the other side of Manly from the beach, very close to the ferry terminal. So it's like a 5-minute walk to the ferry, and that'll be my morning commute, sailing into work past the Opera House every morning. So it's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
Indeed. And another thing we've got to do is, talk about what's on the menu for today. We're going to have a little chat about Brendan in, Brendan out. Just toss some ideas around, especially in honour of Ian being here. It was the most vociferous Brendan out among us. Quick mention of the Paty McCort competition. Very exciting. Drum roll, please. And the main part of this show is a chat with Hamish Carton, everybody's favourite YouTuber, talking about his life in Australia. That's very interesting coming up. Well, you can be the judge of that, but I enjoyed it. And once we come back, we're going to have a quick talk about the refereeing situation in Scotland, followed by our Celtic social media choices. Let's quickly see who's in the comments and say hello. Who's the snitch saying look out for the sharks? Are there sharks around Manly?
Oh, there's plenty. I'll keep that in mind.
Parkhead boy. All right, troops. Wasn't that a stress-free weekend? Yeah, but we miss the stress, don't we? And various others in the comments. So hello to all. There's Monty saying hello, but I won't show his message because he's insisting on keeping up this Dickie Attenborough thing. Anyway, it's not Dickie Attenborough, is it? Oh, it is Dickie Attenborough, not David. Anyway, that's the last time I'm going to mention it, and I hope you do the same, Monty, because, it's getting boring. And nobody's heard of 10 Rillington Place, so there's 2 mentions for you. Hopefully that'll be satisfactory. Okay, so I want to talk a bit about how we're feeling at this stage of the season, international break, in the final furlong, really. Now, as I mentioned, Ian, you were famously Rodgers out. This isn't working. It hasn't worked. It's a disaster. He's lost whatever mojo he had. Has that tempered at all, Ian?
I think it always tempers during the international break, just because it gets so boring and you just forget the sort of monotony that's served up weekly. So I think could have had over a week free of dull football and probably softened a wee bit. I think it's difficult when we're in it now. I think Rodgers is the right person. I just don't think his football is kind of entertaining enough. I don't enjoy, on the whole over this season, like I said, we're maybe up to about maybe 5 or 6 enjoyable games now, which I just don't think should be the case. I think the style of football now, there's arguments to say, will he get his players, etc. The fact of the matter is, in my head, I've kind of locked it off. He's clearly, I think even if he loses the league, I think he'll still be here for next season. He shouldn't be, but I think he will be. So I think there's a little bit of like kind of damage limitation in my own mind for my own sanity to just kind of say, look, he's going to be here for the long haul. You're just going to have to put up with the kind of delusional takes and interviews and things like that. And we've just kind of got on with it. I support Celtic, and the team. I don't really support Brendanrodgers as a person. He's the guy that's in charge now, and I'll support Celtic now whilst he's in charge, and I'll support Celtic long after he's gone. Do I think he's the right guy? No. Do I enjoy his football? No. Do I enjoy interviews with him? No. Do I think he talks a lot of sense? No. But we are where we are.
Wow, glad you answered a lot of my follow-up questions there, I have to tell you, Ian. Well, as you say, there's no sign of him leaving. Just last night, Dano and I spoke to Lone Star CSC from Texas. They're going to be featuring in Thursday's show. Had a great chat with them. And Brendan was over for that event in New York, and they went to it, the foundation event. And as you'll hear in that interview, they had a good blether with Brendan, and they were saying he seems well up for the fight, and he's talking long term, and as we all know, you can believe what Brendan says, right, Stephen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I don't know, I don't think you can gloss over the personnel issues at the club this year and the weaknesses in the squad compared to last year. And in my view, the club, or the form of the team, has been in decline since probably around about February last year, and the tail end of Angie's time at the club. And then that's all been down to the poor recruitment at the club. And I think that's just continued on in this season. I think we've seen in fits and starts what Brendan Rodgers is capable of tactically, but I don't think he can be truly judged until he has a decent squad of players, basically. And I think, I would like to see him staying for next year, regardless of whether we win or lose the league. But unfortunately, I just think it's the natural order in football. If we lose the league to this Rangers team this season, I think he'll go. I think the pressure will become too much, and the board of directors will be looking for a scapegoat. And it will be Brendan. I think he'll be gone if we don't win the league, and I'm pretty sure about that. Well, I don't think that's the right decision. And anybody who says Brendan should be gone, I would always caveat that with who's coming next, because we don't have a board of directors with a great track record for appointing managers. For every Ange, there was a Ronnie Dyler. For every Brendan Rodgers, there was a Neil Lennon appointed in the showers in Hampden after a cup final. So God only knows what's coming next when Brendan goes. If history's taught us anything, it's taught us, after they go for a high-profile manager, they tend to go for a cheap option, and that's probably what's coming next. So unless, if somebody could say to me, we're guaranteed to get a top-class manager in after Brendan, I'd say, okay, fair enough. But I just don't think that's the case. And I think you're just as likely to see John Kennedy being promoted to the top job as you are for getting a top manager in. So for that point of view, I think Brendan's the best manager we could have at this point in time. Now, I take on board everything Ian said. This season's been a slog. It's been poor. But I feel as if a lot of that's down to the lack of quality running through the squad, particularly on the bench, and the lack of impact that he's able to call on later on in games when it's running away from him. But it hasn't been an easy watch. And if it's true that Brendan is here for a long haul, let's hope there's a huge change in the recruitment policy of the club to go with that. Because if, as Ian says, if we just do the same again this summer as we did last summer, then next year will be more of the same and it'll be another slog. So, I think there's hope. We're looking a lot better at this point than we were a few weeks ago. You wouldn't rule us out getting something at Ibrox, a draw at least. And with Rangers dropping points in the last league game there, I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that we can go on and win the league now. But if we lose it, and I still think probably Rangers are slight favourites, then I do think he'll go.
That's interesting. That's one vote for he'll be here regardless, and one for if we lose the league, he's gone. Right? Well, I think somewhere in between. I think it depends on what happens between now and the end of the season. If we play some decent football and we run it close or whatever, we will definitely look back at this season and say it was all because of the personnel issues, and look at what we were good in the end. But by then, I think we'd sort of lost our grasp on the title. Whereas if we go back to being dross, boring Brendan ball and lose by a margin, I think it might be untenable. Ian, you're about to say something there. Maybe you were going to qualify your statement.
No, I mean, look, I think that my main issue, and I've said it before, is Rodgers. What he talks about doesn't link up with what he does. So when he was talking about working with the players he's got here, developing talent and stuff like that, there's a lot of things that have really, being tactically savvy. A lot of that has been missing from a large part of this season. And it does kind of make me wonder if he's a busted flush. Yeah, we're doing a bit better now than we were, but it's been such a low bar all season that it's, I think we need to see where we are. I think the Ibrox game is clearly the one. If we get anything out of that, then we probably put ourselves in a decent enough position, and he can kind of go on. But we've beaten Rangers twice already this season. That's not really where we've struggled. It's other times. Now he has seemed to find a new system to find a way to win. In terms of being a bit more direct and stuff. At least we can kind of actually see a semblance of play now. This might not be the style he wants to play, but at least we can see it, and he should really have done that a lot earlier. So I think it could be a case of looking back at a season of kind of, if only he'd been able to, compromise his beliefs a bit sooner, might have had a different outcome.
I saw a recent video by our friend Baz, One Celtic Fans View, and he was talking about how Dermot Desmond has enlisted an expensive legal team to back Brendan in his hearing regarding referees. A whole bunch of QCs, which are in fact KCs these days, since the royal family succession occurred. King's councils. And a lot of people in the... Say again?
They had a board reshuffle, didn't they? The royal family.
Yeah. So whether that's indicative of Desmond backing Brendan in every sense is something we'll have to wait and see. But let's move it on. I just want to talk about the Paty McCort competition. As you may know, we've 2 free tickets to give away to the Paty McCort Axom gig at Grace's. And we did this far too complicated competition. It turns out you live and learn. That's the first competition we've ever run, and I think we've learned, keep it simple. Just ask people to send you and who's your favourite paddy or something. So it's fair to say we weren't inundated with responses. Stephen, can you believe that?
I can't believe that. As soon as you mentioned this competition, I was sure it was going to be a winner, Gav. I'd never had any doubts at all. So I'm really surprised to hear that.
So listen, anyone who's watching this right now in the comments and is Glasgow based and wants to go, you've got a great chance. Listen up. All you have to do is send an email to that email address. That's all you have to do. You don't have to say anything in it. You know, just do that and you'll get free tickets to that the Axon do. Can't remember what date it is. It the 4th of April? Early April. We played videos of it the last 4 shows. You should know when it's on. If it's of interest to you, and you'll get free tickets. Otherwise, it'll be Kaiser and Michael going, I would imagine. So there you go. You live and learn with these things, Stephen. Got to keep it simple.
That's right, mate. Simple's always good. That's been my motto in life.
Okay, so it's time to move it on now to the chat I had with Hamish Carton, previously of 67 Hill Hill, now his own channel, Celtic AM. So, guys, you can sit back and relax, make a cup of tea, and enjoy this little peek into Hamish's life in Australia. Hamish Carton, welcome back to the Celtic World.
Great to be back on. Thanks very much.
And you've been a busy boy since you were on, first of all, with us. I'd like to say I'm delighted to see how your career has flourished after your first appearance with us.
Are you taking credit for that? Yeah.
Entirely.
I don't even know if it's flourished, has it?
Well, I don't know. You seem to be everywhere now these days.
Ugh, I'm always everywhere. Nothing has changed there.
Well, speaking of where you are, this is your new channel, Celtic AM. Look, it's only been going 5 minutes and you've got almost 4,000 subscribers. That's very depressing for a newbie wee channel like ours, of course. But you deserve it, Hamish. You're a known face. You've been putting in the work for years and years.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's I'm pretty pleased, I would say, with the amount of people who have subscribed, and yeah, I mean, good to be back and you know, have my own channel and be able to kind of lead things the way I want to lead them, and you know, kind of take on the risk as well of the whole thing. So it's a bit of a challenge, but I relish a challenge. So no, it's been a good start. I think we've been going 6 weeks or something, and very quickly got back into the routine of doing videos.
And the videos are very much in the style that people would have become accustomed to with you on 67 Hill Hill. It's sort of the same idea with a different sort of wrapping.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I did. I made the videos, planned the videos, the solo videos anyway. I planned, recorded, edited, uploaded them on 67 Hill Hill. So that's why, like, it's very, very similar, because it's me that's doing, you know, the same stuff, and obviously you kind of notice the same kind of things. So no, that's the situation there. Hopefully as time goes on, we can kind of push things further as well. It's very much just in its early days, trying to kind of build a bit of a subscriber base, and then we can maybe try some new things as time goes on.
Well, I'm sure you've heard the big news is that Celtic World have just recently crossed the 1,000 subscriber mark. How exciting is that in our first season? Because we're like a bunch of neighbours, just come together to talk Celtic. So I think that's pretty good, isn't it, for a first season?
No. 1,000 people's, like, when you think about the amount of people that is that have, you know, not just subscribed, but chances are you have, you know, many more people who aren't subscribed who are watching your videos. So I mean, 1,000's a terrific number, and yeah, as you say, you guys just kind of get together and chat, and you know, I enjoy it. But it just shows, you know, there's so many different Celtic, you know, podcasts and YouTube channels out there, but there's still space for all of them, because there's that much, you know, that many Celtic fans and that much happening. There's always going to be space for different people, and I like the fact that they're like no two podcast YouTube channels are really the same. Like, they're all specialise in different things and have different personalities on them.
Absolutely. So you think there's people actually watching this right now who haven't subscribed to Celtic World? Would you encourage them to do so?
100%, I would. Yeah, I mean, you can find out in your old YouTube dashboard. You get the percentage of people who watch you that are subscribed and aren't subscribed, and the numbers always really kind of startle me because it's almost always at least over 50% of the people watching aren't subscribed. So you think of the kind of potential that's out there if you can convert all of those people over to subscribing as well.
So the idea behind your channel, or behind the name of it, is that you're leveraging the time difference to publish a new video that greets people in Scotland with the latest news when they wake up.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen when you move back to Scotland? You're going to be working nights?
We'll become Celtic PM at that stage, maybe. I'm not sure, to be honest. Yeah, I have considered that. I think for now it's just a case of growing it, and yeah, I think people will be very open to whatever we plan, because I mean that would be a downside of that going home. The fact that obviously 7 a.m. videos wouldn't be possible anymore, I don't think. However, there would obviously be so many more things we'll be able to do when I'm back in Scotland that we can't do at the moment. So, there's plenty of potential when I move back home, even if the videos do have to move, later in the day.
Have you considered like AM meaning something else in that future?
I could. I've got plenty of time to think of something, don't I? I can work something out.
Or you could call it Celtic AF. The kids would be down for that.
Yeah. Just get a wee change in the old Photoshop. No, like I've thought of all that, and it was one of the first things that people said to me about the name, and the whole idea was, what's it going to be like when you're not doing videos at that time? Because even here, there's a chance there'll be a video goes up in the evening once, like something will happen, or there'll be a live video. So I don't think the name actually
no one's going to hold your feet to the
matters
fire, are they?
that much. Like if I'm honest, like 67 Hail Hail, I don't think I was ever a massive fan of the name. Like, kind of what does the name mean? But the name isn't actually as important as what you're doing. And obviously, loads of people like 67 Hail Hail. And I don't think it was because the name was catchy or anything. It was just that the actual content became good. You look at number of the other podcasts, I won't name them, but some of them have pretty daft names, but they're brilliant kind of content and people love them. So, yeah, the name's just really a necessity rather than something that's, integral to how the channel grows. Okay,
so you live in the same part of Melbourne as Ange is from, is that right? Or somewhere that featured in his life?
I've moved now, but it's to the neighbouring suburb. So he was brought up in Prahran. We're now in South Yarra. I was in Prahran when I moved here, now moved to South Yarra, but South Yarra is literally the next suburb up from Prahran, and where I'm living at the moment is actually still closer to Prahran, even though it's technically South Yarra. So, yep, I'm in the same kind of suburb as Ange would have once graced.
You walk in the same streets. So have you any sort of Ange pilgrimage checklist?
No, not really. I mean, you kind of encounter various things here. Like there's a Albert Park where the Formula 1 is on this weekend or last weekend as people are watching this. There's like a kind of public park there that's called Ange Postecoglou Field or Park, which is quite interesting. And there's also, people will have seen the mural of Ange in his Celtic days with the Premiership trophy. There's like a huge one in Melbourne that kind of went viral at the time when he was at Celtic. I would really like to kind of go and visit that at some stage. I don't even think it's too far from here, but I've just not managed to get around to doing it yet. But there's loads of things. Obviously, I'd like to go to a South Melbourne home game where Ange started out. And Spurs are coming here in the summer as well to play Newcastle. So yeah, Ange will be back at that stage.
Okay, so you touched on the A-League there, or South Melbourne at least. I'm interested to know your view on the qualities of the A-League, what standard you'd compare it to, the challenges it faces. So to intro that, I've got a little short video here, compiling a few of your A-League tweets. Bevy, son, and tickets on your phone. What a league, it says there. Really enjoyed that tonight. Victory looked like a proper side. Iran Kunda's box office for a 17-year-old. I like it a lot. And I think that you can probably hear the sound in these next few. Sound was very quiet on this one, but look at this guy's through. He can't miss. Just hit it, son.
One up there, let it hang, easy for Jamie Young. Quick release for Tillio, who's quick. Takes a touch, gets past Holman really well. Tillio and Marco Tillio, welcome back to the A-League.
Yeah, that guy looks good. We should look into him. Apparently he's done his hamstring.
Yeah, he's going to be missing for, I think, another month or so, if not longer. But, I mean, terrific goal. It shows what he has in his locker. But, yeah, no, I've really enjoyed the A-League so far. The quality of football for me... Quality of football for me is like... I'm not as bothered about the actual quality as I am exciting football. I would much rather go to a game with lesser quality that has loads of goals and incidents than go and see, you know, the two best teams in the world, Man City and Real Madrid, say, and it be a terrible 0-0. Like, I would much rather see an enjoyable game. So, A-League quality, I'm not actually sure. I would say certainly the top teams would be mid-table in the Scottish Premiership. I think maybe some of the lower teams, would be kind of lower in the Scottish Premiership. So it's probably take Celtic and Rangers out of the equation, possibly Hearts as well. I think it's very similar quality-wise. The big issue is the crowds they get here, and it's a bit of a culture shock having gone from Celtic Park to, the matches here where a lot of the time the stadiums are practically empty.
Yeah, who's the club? There's some Sydney club that my local team here in Malaysia, Sabah, ended up playing in the, the Asian Cup.
Yeah, Western Sydney
Champions League
Wanderers, was
equivalent. No, it was like some southern team. But the attendance was just a few people scattered around.
Yeah.
It was really pathetic. It looked like it could be in the hundreds or very small thousands, Can't even remember the name of the team. It was a team I'd never heard of before. But it was mad because you go to a game here, you could have easily 25,000 or something, filling the stadium up. So it's not just A-League you've been interested in. Obviously, Australia is a great sporting nation, and you've been drinking in the delights of some other sports. I've seen some pictures. I don't know if these are all you that took these pictures, but you can talk us through them.
Yep, so that was Australian Open qualifying. Again, not a great crowd there, as you can see, because it was qualifying. It did fill up in the actual 2 weeks of the actual Australian Open proper. You could barely get a seat anywhere on any court. It was magic. Bit of sun, as you can see.
How'd you like sitting out in the sun for hours watching tennis?
Well, I burned myself like mad that day, because you can see in that photo there is shelter at the top of the stands, but I wasn't under those, and sat for about an hour and a half with my kind of legs out and got royally scorched. So that was a warning for me about the climate here and the dangers of being out in the Melbourne sun. It apparently only takes 6 or 7 minutes to actually burn here in the sun, which is ridiculous. That was that was on, I think, is it John Cain Arena, and watching Mira Andreeva, who I think was 16 or 17 years old and went on a really good run in the competition. So that was a fun day out as well.
Like, are you a tennis guy? Do you like playing or watching? Would you go to a game at home?
I don't play, but I like watching it. I'd actually never been to see tennis live.
I've never been. It must be amazing to see great players.
Yeah, I mean, like this match here was Sinner who went on to win it, and Rublev, and it was great view, like, almost like the TV view, not too dissimilar, and just being there is incredible. Like, I really enjoyed it. Goes on for a long time, tennis, but you can kind of dip in and out, and there's loads of stuff kind of going on elsewhere, and you can get a drink and cups of coffee if it's late at night. So no, it was really impressive tournament, the way they ran it.
Very good. No, I've never seen live tennis, and I always wonder what it's like to see experts of the game, doing the things that you could never do in a million years.
Yeah.
Like, I play a wee bit, and my son plays, but yeah, well, that's the tennis. All right, next thing we're going to move on to AFL.
Yep.
Delighted to announce that Secret Santa has started the AFL team for next season. No going back now. Tell us what went behind your decision to start barracking for the Hawthorn Hawks. Oh, jeez, I can't even say that. The Hawthorn Hawks.
The first thing that happens when you come to Australia is people ask you, who's your team? Yeah, and by that they don't mean football team. They mean your AFL team. And there's maybe 18 teams in the AFL, and I'd say at least 10 of them are actually from Melbourne. So Melbourne's like the kind of hub of AFL. There's a few teams I'd looked at, and I felt I couldn't go for like Collingwood, who won it last season, because that would be seen as glory hunting. I went to see a couple of other teams and didn't really get the feeling for them, so I just settled on the Hawthorn Hawks. I've been to Hawthorn a few times. It's only about 10-15 minutes from here, and it's a nice place, so I kind of like the colours. I mean, where else are you going to see a team wearing brown and yellow as their two main colours? So yeah, I've gone for them, and I mentioned that to someone, I think, in passing, and ended up with it as a Secret Santa gift, obviously at Christmas. So that's who I'm supporting. The new season just started, in the last couple of weekends. Hawthorn played their first game last weekend, lost narrowly to Essendon, who are another Melbourne-based team. So it was a disappointing start. I don't think they're going to be chasing the title this season, but it's a very even league, so you just really never know what's going to happen.
You've been to the MCG, haven't you, to see a game?
Few times.
Who did you see play there?
So that was St Kilda and GWS Giants, who are from Sydney area.
I went there years ago and saw North Melbourne play, and they had a few Irish fellas in the team, like Gaelic footballers were brought over. So I suppose they would be my team. Them or Geelong. When I was a kid, when I was a teenager, they used to have AFL on the TV. I don't know if you remembered that, or it probably didn't happen when you were young, but
I remember it being on Sky Sports had it for a while when I was younger, and I remember watching it and just never really it would obviously be on early in the morning, and I'd never really watch it, but I really enjoy it when you actually get into it here, and it helps when everyone's mad about it. The crowds are crazy. They get like for basically one city who are mad about it. The fact that you could have like 3 or 4 games on in Melbourne, either at the MCG or Marvel over the course of a weekend, and they could all have 60,000-70,000 at them. It's just, mad.
Well, in my research for this, I just thought, I'll find out a little bit about the Hawthorn Hawks. Do you find it hard to say that, like I do? Say it.
Hawthorn Hawks.
Oh, no trouble. Purple burglar alarm. You'd struggle with that, being Scottish.
Purple burglar alarm.
Yeah, see? All right. But what I came across was it's got a bit of the AFL, as with Australia generally, has a slightly troubled history, let's say, with Indigenous players. But the Hawthorn Hawk, your team, are like the top of the tree with that. There's lots of drama down the years, fans with blackface banners and booing Indigenous players, senior players saying racist things and one recruitment manager saying he'd been told by a white club official, don't sign anyone with skin darker than mine. And this is all like since 2000, so it's not ancient history. So hopefully you can bring some racial harmony to the Hawks.
Well, I wasn't aware of that at all, but I'm not massively surprised that there's stuff like that going on. There's huge awareness of that kind of stuff in Australia, like the amount of mentions you hear of the Indigenous community, like but before virtually everything you will go to, like every kind of public event. And they had a big referendum here last year, which I think didn't go the way a lot of people were hoping. So it's never far away here.
Okay, well, let's move on to the slightly more pleasant and easy subject of sort of tourism and what things have you been up to. I was listening to a podcast the other day and they talked about this place, Peninsula Hot Springs. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I've not.
Well, apparently it's gorgeous. You can see where it is there down at the end of that peninsula, funnily enough.
I've been to Phillip Island. You can see there just to the right of it. I was there. Yeah. They've got like a really good motorbike track where the MotoGP actually visits later. So I've been roughly to that area, but not to the hot springs.
I went to Phillip Island in like 1996, I think, and bumped into a guy there, a fellow backpacker playing pool, who's become a lifelong friend ever since. And he lives in Geelong now, funnily enough.
Yep.
He's a Welsh fella. We've been out to Geelong and the Great Ocean Road.
Yeah, we've done the Great Ocean Road. Did we pass? Yeah, you would have passed through Geelong and Torquay. Yeah. That was great. We got really good weather for that as well. It's a long way to drive though, isn't it?
Yeah. And there's a lot of flies, but look, this is the springs. That looks nice.
Wow.
You'd be down there, taps off.
Yeah.
It's not quite the same as taps off in Celtic Park.
No.
Okay, so that's that. What about Ballarat?
No, I've not been there. I've been offered to go there because that's where I believe what are they called now? I've forgotten now. The Western Melbourne team are Western United are from there, I believe, and they've just built a new stadium there. So I've been offered actually to go to a game there. I think it's about an hour away from me, maybe 2 hours, something like that.
Well, it's great. It's an old mining town, and they have all these people in traditional dress and stuff. You learn all about the history of the mining days in Australia. People all dolled up like this. It's really cool.
Wow.
It's a right laugh. Like all the people who work there wear this kind of stuff. Even I think if they're not acting. Some of them are obviously acting.
Yeah.
But look, you can have a go at panning for gold and stuff. This is fun, isn't it? I haven't mentioned Celtic yet.
Different to the city, isn't it?
Certainly is. And then, oh yes, the next place is Glenrowan. Have you heard of that?
No.
It's where Ned Kelly had his famous last stand. You've heard of Ned Kelly, the famous outlaw?
No.
It's a really famous Australian outlaw, like of Irish descent, stood up to the sort of Brits, the British security forces or whatever you would call them in Australia at the time. And this is how he went out. He created this metal thing where you could only see his eyes could see through, and went out, sort of for his last stand. And eventually they took him down. His mum was from Ballymena, near me. Ned Kelly's a very famous guy in Australian history.
Yeah.
Fantastic. There you go. What a great segment that was.
Loads of places to visit I've not been to yet.
It's giving you a few ideas. Well, look, before we lose too many people on the stream, let's bring it back to Celtic, Hamish. Tell us, have you been on a roller coaster of emotions this season, or have you been playing it cool?
Yeah, it's just been a tough season, to be honest. right from the start, it's been a bit of a slog, and we've not really been able to. Well, the team haven't been able to pick up any sort of momentum really at any stage, or if they have, it's quickly been, stopped by like the winter break, for example. So yeah, there's been good moments this season, big results, but there's been a lot of drab performances as well. But I'm just at this point, we're recording, during the international break. I'm just looking forward to the rest of the season, and I just feel as if there's a bit of hope there now. Where I think about a month ago, a lot of us were maybe a little resigned to the way the season was heading. It might still go that way, but I just feel as if there's a few kind of bright sparks in there, and some players returning, and reasons to be hopeful.
Definitely. What players are you expecting to bring the goods in this final furlong?
I think Kyogo coming, back to form would be great, and I think there's been signs of that in recent matches. And obviously Hatate's going to come back, and hopefully we get McGregor back pretty soon as well. I think those two in the midfield will make a huge difference, because the midfield's kind of been a bit of a problem area for me recently. Even during some of our better performances, Paulo Bernardo's not really, doing it for me, and I think Matt O'Reilly's not been particularly well in recent weeks. So hopefully he can, get better and get back to his top level. But I think Hatate and McGregor coming back will be big. Obviously keeping Carter Vickers fit is just so important for us, because he just makes a difference to the entire team. Everyone is just so much more settled when Carter Vickers is in that team. So yeah, that's what I mean. And I think Kyogo's good enough to lead us to the title, because he's, that good. So as I say, there's things to be positive about, whereas a month ago there wasn't really, or there weren't really.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I don't expect Hatate to come back and be suddenly, running the show. He has tended to take a few games, and there's not that many games left, so I'm not sure how much of a contribution he can make, maybe just at the very end of the season. But I have a feeling O'Reilly's beginning to play his way back into form. I quite liked the look of him the other day. Not everything came off, but he was still making pretty good decisions and stuff, Him and Kyogo, two of them, I'm very hopeful for. And you have no problem with the captain coming back and slotting right back in as if he's never been away.
He's did a video, huge, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. You did a video the other day of goalkeepers, 5 goalkeepers that we might have our eye on. Do you think any of those are likely, or have any of them risen in prominence since you did the video?
Not really, and there's not really been many reports. I think there was one about a Dutch goalkeeper maybe over the last kind of week or so, but to be honest, I've not properly looked into that, so I wouldn't like to comment. But I think it's just going to be a case of waiting until the end of the season, and then we'll tackle it. There's just too much going on at the moment, but the club need to do it quickly in the summer, regardless of who the manager is, whether we're champions or not, whether we're playing Champions League football, group stage or whatever it's called now or not. Yeah. They need to do it quickly, because we can't afford to, have Scott Bain or Ben Siegrist starting the season, because it just brings uncertainty to the whole place. Am I hopeful of that? Probably not, because the club haven't exactly been spotless recruitment-wise in recent, windows, but that's what has to happen as far as I'm concerned.
Do you think this is going to be a summer of immense change?
Don't think any more so than it always is. I mean, there's not really a summer that goes by now where we're not rebuilding to an extent. That's just the way things are now. I think Matt O'Reilly will probably move on in the summer. Obviously, we know Joe Hart's going, possibly a few others. But even just replacing those two, you could say that's a fair bit of upheaval. But that's what we're used to. That's the way the model has to work. The issue is we need to sign better players this summer and more first team ready players.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that we'll have the same manager at the start of next season?
Oh, it's a good question. Well, if he wins the league, he'll still be there, won't he? If he doesn't, I know some people who think he still will be there even if he doesn't win the league, but I would say that would be the fan pressure would be massive if we don't win the league this season. But I think he'll win the league, and I think he'll be here next season. That's my opinion at this stage.
That's a good bit of positivity, as always, from Hamish. All right,
Yeah.
well, look, that's been a good chat. Thank you very much for joining us here today and helping our viewers enjoy some interesting content during the international break instead of just, I don't know what other people are going to be doing, especially because there's always a dearth of information.
Yeah. I don't know if they'll call me interesting, but certainly, your stuff in general is very interesting. So, no, I appreciate you having me back on, and hope to do it again at some stage.
Good, man. All right, Hamish, all the best. There you go. Stephen, your reaction to our chat with Hamish?
Yeah, a lot of interesting comments. Obviously, I don't live in Melbourne, I live in Sydney, so Sydney's not an AFL town at all. Sydney's a rugby league town. But interestingly enough, rugby league's a sort of secondary passion of mine. I follow a team called the West Tigers, who are demonstrably the worst team in the competition here in Australia. They hardly ever win. So I was out at a game with my son on Saturday night there, and it's always great fun. And we actually had a win. So I feel as if following Celtic, whether we like to complain a lot or not, we do win most of the time. But I think when you follow a team who don't win, hardly ever, it kind of balances my juju a little bit. Do you know what I mean? So it's very enjoyable. But yeah, interesting comments. The A-League, his comments about the standard of the A-League were pretty good as well. I think the A-League's biggest problem is the league itself. The teams that make up the A-League are not real football teams. They're like manufactured clubs that have been pulled together. The old style of football here in Australia, the clubs were all based on ethnic grounds. Like you had Croatian teams, you had Greek teams, you had Italian teams, and when the A-League was formed, they tried to move away from all that. And in some cases, they got it right. Some of the Melbourne teams, Melbourne Victory, are a big team with a big support. But some of the other teams that they've tried to bring into the competition, like Western United, they were mentioned there, they've really struggled for fans. And a team out to the Western Sydney here called Macarthur FC are playing in front of 1,000 people or so. So
that's the name I was trying to think of. That's who Saba played in the Asian Cup.
Yeah, Macarthur FC. Yeah, they play out to Campbelltown, which is in southwest Sydney. They're only a couple of years old. So they're fighting a struggle, and of course in Australia you're competing against other sporting codes like AFL and Rugby League, Rugby Union, for people. But football's by far and away the highest participation sport here. That's what you see being played on a Saturday morning. But they just have to learn some way to bridge that gap between the kids playing on all the fields on a Saturday morning and getting them into the A-League. So the transition is not great in that respect.
And you saw one of the comments there was rugby is a load of pish. Ian, does that disturb you?
I mean,
considering your location?
Yeah, I would have to get him to qualify that, whether he's talking about rugby league or rugby union, because as Ian will tell you, the two are very, very different.
I take league over union, but I'd take AFL over either if I was there. Ian?
I've been exposed to way too much rugby over the last 6 to 8 weeks with the Six Nations, so I'm glad it's gone again now. Actually, we were watching, I can't remember what game it was, but the standard was so poor that a couple of the people in the CSC were saying, can we turn over to like the Wales game or something? And it was that bad that a couple of us were like, well, maybe we should turn it over. So no, jokes aside, Six Nations is gone, so I'm glad it's gone now because people can stop pretending to like rugby for a bit.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, well, let's move it on. The next thing I want to talk about is to do with refereeing. Now, let me see. I have to give a big shout out to the Huddle breakdown. I would say if you're in the mood for it, then it is peerless among Celtic YouTube channels. But you have to be in the mood for it. I think it's fair to say. The stats that they come out with and, poring over data the way they do. But I was watching it the other day, really enjoyed it. And what I'm about to say is entirely inspired by their latest episode. And that involves some initial steps towards refereeing reform in Scotland. And they referenced sentinelcelts.com. I'll show you the link in a second. I'll put a link in the description, where there's this move to encourage small shareholders in Celtic to get together to table a resolution at the AGM to make proposals for the reform of refereeing in Scotland. And they need 100 shareholders to sign up. And I believe we have a few within our ranks of the Celtic world, or at least one. The idea being that the move should be towards treating refereeing as a service that the SFA provide to the league, rather than the clubs having to accept whatever they're given by the SFA. It's pretty interesting. Let me just put this little thing up. There's the URL there, top of the screen. The SFA provide a number of services. This is the plan. The SFA provide a number of services to the clubs who play in Scotland. The SFA should not be seen as their masters, but their servants. The clubs in the professional leagues are the customers, and the SFA are the service providers. This would be a huge cultural change, allowing competition to provide such services from outside Scotland and avoiding the domestic problems associated with recruiting from within a limited population pool. So the idea of this is that the league, i.e. the clubs, are the customers and should be in charge of evaluating performance. And if the league aren't happy, they're free to seek other service providers if the SFA aren't cutting it. So the SFA are incentivized to provide a good service and a meritocracy among their referees. And then this would open the door to, possibly foreign referees getting involved if the local ones aren't up to snuff. Like they were saying, it might be more exciting for the seventh best referee in the Premier League to become the top referee in Scotland. There might be more cachet involved in that. So does that sound like an interesting step in the right direction to you, Stephen?
Well, I think any initiative to improve the standard of refereeing in this country or in Scotland would be something we need to treat as a positive. The only fly in the ointment I can see there is like the SFA, just being devil's advocate for a minute, the SFA will say that they're the Scottish Football Association, and every club in Scotland's already a member of the SFA, and every club in Scotland can seek election onto the various committees, boards, and whatever, including the whatever refereeing committees there are, or whatever process there is for selecting referees. That we all know there's problems there. And I think any attempt to hold them accountable and at least sort of get these issues dragged kicking and screaming into the public domain, because at the moment you're just not allowed to talk about it. It was if you mention referees, you just get told to shut up. And of course they're not biased. Exactly. Of course they're not incompetent. Move on, and that's the end of it. And we are just expected to believe that. But us as the biggest club in the country, we should have the most influence with the SFA, and I think it comes down to the Celtic board, who are going to have to be the ones that drive change. But unfortunately, the position we're in is that most other clubs in Scotland see this as a Celtic and Rangers issue. They don't just see it as a Rangers only issue as we do. So those clubs probably don't share the same appetite for change as we do, or certainly not the same type of change that we want to see. But for me, if you're going to be in any way serious about improving standards, there's two things you need to do. The first is full-time referees. These guys have to be full-time. It has to be their job. And then what you mentioned before, Gav, about recruiting referees from other associations then becomes a possibility if it's an actual profession. And the second thing they have to do is a register of interests. You just can't have people refereeing games with a team they support. It's a very, very simple thing to do, and there's really no legitimate reason why they can't do that. So if this, as a shareholder in Celtic, as I'm sure you were alluding to, Gav, I'd be quite happy to put my name to this. If I felt as if there's a genuine move to try and introduce some more accountability to the SFA on the actual standard of the referees. But this isn't difficult to fix. It's difficult in terms of the fact it's been ingrained in Scottish society for so many years. But the steps they can take to improve are not that difficult.
Yeah, hence the need for a cultural shift. So I'm just showing it here on the screen. The Sentinel Celts website, resolution on refereeing standards. And they even after the first couple of paragraphs, they reference, we want this issue dealt with in an open and transparent manner rather than the usual channels which have led us precisely nowhere so far. Indeed, it would be a start if Celtic released a statement like the one issued by Motherwell about the impact of VAR in their match at the weekend. So when you think about VAR, you know that multiple clubs have issues with it and the way it's been implemented. And also, if ever there was a time when it was less of a Celtic and Rangers issue, I think that's now. So anyway, if anyone's interested in that, any shareholders out there, like I say, the link is on your screen. It was on earlier, and I'll put it in the show notes. I don't know how many shares you own, Ian, or if that would be of interest to you.
No, not a paid up shareholder myself. What I would touch on there is you've mentioned it, Gav. I think the issue with things like these is more cultural. I think, when Stephen's talking about they put it down to a Celtic and Rangers issue, that's because that's a narrative put forward by the media. I think, like we're starting to maybe see the benefit of social media now in terms of some of the clubs having an issue with VAR and saying it's a problem with VAR and it not getting dismissed. And hopefully that might be the catalyst for getting away from this. Because, I've mentioned it before. There's people I speak to down here that are like Cardiff City fans or Manchester United or Liverpool fans. And you kind of explain to them the situation with, saying a referee goes after the Derby game to a Rangers supporters club to celebrate with like fellow fans. And there's like photographs of that, and it was discussed at the time, and nothing gets done about it. And people are genuinely, they think you are mad because they think that situation cannot be a real situation. So I think the fact that in Scotland that's acceptable, or it's not something to be discussed or investigated, and of course these people aren't biased, etc. I think there's a couple of hurdles that we need to kind of get past as a society and a culture before we can implement sort of basic changes, which this is kind of in the wheelhouse of.
Okay, well, interesting topic to consider and discuss, but let's move it on. It is time for our Celtic social media choices. So, Steve, you're up first.
Yeah, I just thought I'd draw it, if you didn't know, draw everyone's attention to the fact that Rocco Vatter scored another hat-trick for the Republic of Ireland under-21s on the weekend there, albeit they were playing, I think, San Marino, who were dreadful. Some of the defending was genuinely laughable. But, he is a regular international player now at under-21 level. He's up to 5 goals for that team. And he earns rave reviews from the Irish press every time he plays. So I really hope that we can get a deal done with Rocco Vatter for him to stay beyond this season, because I think there's a genuine talent there. I'm not really sure what the issue is with how he's failed to get on the bench, even when, our wing, the performance of our wingers at times this season has been truly dreadful, but he still hasn't made it onto the bench, and he hasn't managed to get any minutes. So, I think I'd like to. I definitely think there's a player there, and I'd like to see him to sign a new contract and certainly play a little bit more between now and the end of the season.
Is it Mikey Johnsonitis though?
Go ahead.
Like, he's performing away from Celtic Park, and then he comes back and the pressure's a bit too much. That's another option.
Yeah, it could be, but I mean, I don't think he's really had a chance to do the Celtic first team yet, and he's only 18, unlike Mikey Johnson, who's been at the same level for a number of years now. So we're never really going to know about Rocco Vata until we see him playing in the first team. In any minutes he has had in the first team, he's not looked out of place. And I find it genuinely strange that we haven't seen him more this season.
Well, you hear Brendan talking about his attitude a bit, don't you? Interestingly, in that other game, he scored a hat-trick, but another player who sounds like he was the result of a Celtic affair got 2 goals. Sinclair Armstrong got a brace, so that's good to know. Right, this is my choice here. This is, as everyone knows, I'm a radical feminist and a staunch supporter of women's football. So this is a post showing how imaginative the women's game is when it comes to free kicks, and it puts the men's game to shame. I've always wondered why set pieces aren't a bit more interesting. Why is it always the same thing that is tried? And here's the women doing something slightly different. You have your opportunity. My internet would play ball.
I can answer your question, Gav, about why the set pieces aren't different, because a lot of it's analytics driven now, and they know if they hit a certain ball in a certain way, then there'll be a certain result. So it's a percentages game with things like set pieces, although I don't know what happens with our set pieces, especially corners.
I've got a very fast internet connection. I have no idea why this doesn't play smoothly.
Joey Barton's sabotaging the feed. He's heard there might be some positivity around the women's game once it stopped.
That was a great free kick.
Is that Alex Morgan?
And then there's all this acting they do. Like, come on, what are you playing at? Do something surprising. Can you imagine our players doing something like this? Watch this one. Kyogo could do this. Check back from an offside position and then be free. Anyways, I'm just showing you the same ones over again because it's playing nice and smoothly.
Speaking of Joey Barton, how much of an absolute clown is he now? You know, his social media performance this weekend and berating a 17-year-old goalkeeper who made a mistake in a cup final is just genuinely
He's found his niche, though. He's found his niche. It's from the sort of Lawrence Fox school of like sink to the, find that little niche where you can kind of remain relevant and you sacrifice everything else. And he just seems to be in the race to the way down. He'll be there with Tommy Robinson, Lawrence Fox, and I can't remember the horrible woman who used to be in The Apprentice, Katie Hopkins. He'll be there with all of them at some sort of event before long, with all the other patriots.
Yeah, I think Monty's a bit of a fan though. Talk us through this choice. This is yours. We're not going to hear it, but there are captions.
Yeah, no, it's just two of the Aston Villa boys are sitting down. Watkins obviously plays for England or is in the cusp of that squad, and McGinn plays for us. And Watkins quite naively is saying to McGinn, I'd want Scotland to win if I was watching and you were playing, and McGinn's like, well, I'd want you to get a hat-trick, but I'd still want you to lose 4-3. And I think it's one of these things that I've found when moving down to Wales, because there's a good few English people down here more so than back home in Scotland. And they're always like, yeah, but we want you to win. It's like, yeah, but you don't have the same experience when you watch UK or British TV, when they all talk about England as we and us and things like that. We pay the licence fee as well. So just funny to see that naivety from Watkins thinking, oh, I'd support Scotland, and McGinn being like, no, not happening. Never want you to win. And nor he should. It's a proper rivalry.
Indeed it is. Okay, well, look, guys, we're just coming towards the end of an excellent show. We've got 233 people apparently watching live, which I think is something of a new record.
Just before we go, Gav, I know since it seems to be okay now to plug other Celtic podcasts on here, I just want to give a big shout out to the Celtic Exchange, who are doing a podcast series at the moment called The Battle to Save Celtic on the 30th anniversary of the Fergus McCann takeover. And if you get a chance, you have to listen to these because they're really, really good. I mean, I was a guy that was around at that time, but I'm just learning so much from them, things I didn't know. On the way home from work tonight, I listened to the latest one with Brian Dempsey, who was a big figure around that takeover at the time, and it was brilliant. Really, really good. And there was another one with Hugh Keevins, the journalist, who was, pretty closely connected to Celtic at that time. There's been one with David Lowe, and a friend of our show, Matt McGlone, was also on doing that. So it's just been brilliant, and I can thoroughly recommend it. So if you get a chance, go and have a listen to them.
Yeah, I'm sure it is great. I haven't listened to it myself, but I heard people saying that the Keevins one was interesting. It comes across as remarkably even-handed.
Really, really good. Yeah, Hugh Keevins isn't my favourite person, but that the podcast they done with the Celtic Exchange was absolutely brilliant.
Okay, so we're praising other shows, other podcasts, left, right, and centre. How about a little one for us?
Hello, lovely boys. I love the Celtic world. I do. Absolutely brilliant. If you haven't already, subscribe immediately.
How'd you like that Welsh accent, Ian?
How much did you have to pay each from Steps for that? Because that was good.
No expense spared. No expense spared. All right. Well, look, thank you very much, Stephen and Ian. Thanks to everyone in the comments. Been a bumper edition. None of this, all filler, no killer, like everybody else is doing during the international break, apart from the podcast we mentioned. and all the other ones, I mean. So next Thursday, or this coming Thursday, is the Lone Star CSC. Myself and Dano had a brilliant chat with them over the weekend, and that's a lot of fun. So look out for that. We will continue to keep our journalistic standards as high as ever, Stephen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Reach for the stars, Gav. That's what I say.
That's right. All right. Until then, farewell.
Yeah.
Cheers.